I would like to start the course by giving you a quick overview of what statistics is all about. And I'm going to use three motivating examples. The first one is imagining that someone is traveling to some new city that they've never been to before and trying to decide what they should pack based on the weather. Should they pack shorts or pants, a jacket, so forth and so on. The second example will be imagining a nutritionist who is studying the sodium content of fast food hamburgers for some reason, for health reasons. And they don't want to just trust the company's reported sodium content. They actually want to figure that out and verify that themselves. And then the third is somebody who is selling a house and trying to decide what kind of price to ask for in terms of the house. Of course, they want to consider all the different variables, the square footage of the house, the number of rooms and bedrooms and bathrooms, and those kinds of things to set a fair price, not too expensive, not too cheap. And of course, all three of these, you could guess, you could try to figure things out without any information, but it makes the most sense to try to collect some information. For example, the person traveling to the city would look at the weather, what the weather has been the last couple of days, and use that to try to make a decision of what to pack. The nutritionist, of course, because they don't trust the fast food company's numbers, would want to purchase a hamburger and take it back to the lab and analyze it and see how much sodium is in there. And of course, the person who's trying to sell their home would look up somewhere, what homes sold for and how many dollars per square foot people were charging to sell their homes, and take these facts into account. And these facts are things we call data. These are the things that we know, we've determined, and would use to help us make a decision. But there's a problem with the data, right? Things vary. There's variation in all of these scenarios. Even though we can find out what the weather was like in the last couple of days, today's weather in this city is not going to be the same as yesterday's or the day before's, because the weather goes up and down. It gets rainy, it gets sunny, changes from day to day. And of course, in the burger example, there's variation because each chain will have a little bit different ingredients on their hamburger, and a little bit different way they make their hamburgers, and so they'll be different between each chains of burgers. So getting one burger from one restaurant is not going to be sufficient. And even worse, in some sense, is that the fact that even at a particular restaurant where the ingredients are purportedly the same and the burgers are manufactured in the same way, there'll be variation. The burgers at a particular restaurant will be different, one burger from the next, because of little small changes. And then, of course, with the realty house selling example, no two houses are the same. So even if this person is trying to sell her house and has figured out what other houses are sold for in different places, they aren't going to be able to know exactly what to do with their house, because how much to sell it for, because their house is a little different than everybody else's. So there's this variation. Now, we have language when we are confronted with these kinds of situations where we talk about, well, the sodium content is about 900 milligrams, or the houses typically sell for $60 per square foot. And these are expressions of our uncertainty. So there's this link between the variation that occurs in these situations and our uncertainty of how we should go forward. And that's actually one of the central pieces of statistics, is this combination of variation and uncertainty, this duality. And what statistics does is try to find out how things vary in a patterned way, because actually in many cases, if we look at the variation, it's not just all over the place and things just vary arbitrarily. There's some regularity even in the variation. these patterns that show up again and again in lots of different situations. And so what statistics developed over time were mathematical models to sort of capture that variation and use it so that we can be precise about how certain we are, or same contrariwise, be precise of how uncertain we are. And so what we'll start with in this class is looking at lots of different data sets, looking at data that come from real examples, real data collected on real things, and see this variation and notice that there's these patterns and try to learn about these patterns and try to be able to describe the patterns that we see in data over and over again so that we can utilize them. Statistics really, yes, is about variation, but really in the end, it's about turning information, the data that we have, which is just raw information. We'll see some examples of this, but we want to turn that into knowledge, so knowing something that we didn't before. So what we'll be doing is looking at data, making pictures that show the variation and the patterns that show up in the data, and analyzing the uncertainty and making statements that say, I'm this or that certain or uncertain. And then, of course, there's another aspect of our class, which is that the actual collecting data, being able to collect good data, is going to turn out to be a very important task to get good information and therefore good knowledge. And all of this is kind of feeding into our sense of spotting and recording the patterns that statisticians have seen over time that appear again and again in different situations. So let's just briefly talk about the big goals of this course. The first part of the course is going to be focused on, as I mentioned, looking at real data and being able to interpret and communicate what we see in that data set, the variation we see, the patterns we see. We will also want to be able to understand what can go wrong in statistics, how things don't work out because of the uncertainty or because of the way the data is collected. So spotting deficiencies in conclusions in articles or write-ups or reports. I like to say this is tuning your BS meter. A lot of things are passed off as very official statistics, but then turn out to be baloney. And in fact, there's a famous quotation attributed to different people. Mark Twain is one who said there are three kinds of lies, damned lies, and statistics, sort of indicating that statistics is this kind of terrible lie. But statistics actually is powerful. It can actually make good statements. It's just that it can be misused and misinterpreted, and because there's some complexity to it, some people are influenced more strongly than they ought to be. So I'm going to try to get you to understand what this is all about so that you can really look critically at a conclusion and make a decision that this is a worthwhile conclusion where this one is not. Spot those lies. And of course, because statistics is all around us, we'll have some exercises in the future where I will ask you to find some articles from the newspaper that have statistics in them, and it'll be very easy. You will not have a trouble finding articles that reference statistics or data that was collected and conclusions based on that data. Polls, health studies, so forth and so on. And so this is the kind of thing that you're going to run into a lot, and being a good, well-informed citizen, it means being able to read these things and understand what they're saying and understand what the limitations are of such studies and so forth. Finally, I just want to make a pitch. This is only the basic class. We won't be getting into deep statistical ideas, but we'll be seeing kind of a brief view of them. And it turns out that statistics is this huge growth field in the 21st century. Statisticians are in demand in many companies and in business and government, and making conclusions based on data is very important for all these aspects. You can think of Facebook and all the data they collect on you, and Google and Walmart, which has one of the large data center up in Arkansas, because they collect every piece of information about the transactions that happen at the stores, and they want to turn that data and information into knowledge that they can then use to sell more and get people to buy more. One of the reasons this is such a big growth industry is because actually data is easier to get now with the computer, with technology, with the measuring systems that are available automatically to collect data. We have tons of data. The amount of data that's collected around the world every day is staggering. Just even alone at Facebook and Google, the amount of data that they collect, and they want that turned into knowledge, and so therefore they are hiring statisticians. So this is not a bad field to get into. You'll have to go on beyond this course. Obviously, you'll have to take more mathematics. You'll have to study some more things in depth. It certainly opens opportunities because there's so much statistics out there.